What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. Heat pushed through the walls, mixing with sweat and dust, and the whispers of a town ready to judge a young woman before she could even speak for herself. Evelyn Monroe stood straight, chin lifted, even though her hands trembled at her sides. Her blue cotton dress, the one that had belonged to her mother, felt too soft, too gentle for the fight she found herself in. Judge Cornelius Blackwood looked down at her from his bench like a man deciding the fate of a criminal instead of a woman trying to survive. His gray beard twitched as he spoke. "Miss Monroe, you stand accused of running an establishment of questionable morality." The crowd leaned forward. Some women gasped like they had been waiting for this moment. Men shifted in their seats, pretending they weren't the same ones who tipped their hats at Evelyn only days before. Evelyn held her ground. She wasn't running anything immoral. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. She had taken in laundry and sewing after her father died and left her with nothing but debt. Margaret Willoughby's lies had twisted that simple work into something ugly, and the town had believed it faster than a spark catching dry grass. Judge Blackwood sighed loudly, pretending to be disappointed. "Your father was a respected man. It saddens me to see his daughter fall so far." Evelyn swallowed the anger rising in her chest. He used to respect her father, until her mother turned down Blackwood's marriage proposal years ago. Some grudges grew old, but they never died. Blackwood raised a hand. "This court believes in redemption. You have two choices: 18 months at Yuma Women's Reformatory." Gasps echoed through the room. Everyone knew Yuma was where hope went to die. Or, he continued, savoring the moment, "you may be claimed in holy matrimony by any man in good standing." Evelyn felt her stomach twist. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. Marriage to a stranger or prison, a cage either way. Henrietta Pruitt called out from the benches, "My cousin Josiah will marry her." The crowd murmured. Josiah Pruitt was 60, half blind, and smelled like old whiskey. Evelyn would rather face rattlesnakes. Blackwood scanned the room. "Anyone else?" Quote. Silence stretched. Men stared at the floor. Women stared at her. Evelyn felt a burn behind her eyes, but she refused to cry. Near the back of the room sat the prisoners awaiting transport. Most were drunks or petty thieves. But one man sat apart, chained at the wrists and ankles, waiting for the gallows on Sunday. Luke Callahan. The name carried a kind of forbidden weight. Train robber. Killer, they said. A man carved from sin and danger. But when Evelyn's eyes met his, she didn't see a monster. She saw understanding. A man who knew what it meant to be trapped. He was younger than the stories had painted him. Dark hair. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. A scar along one side of his face. Eyes the color of storm clouds on the horizon. He sat like the chains were an annoyance, not a sentence. Before she could stop herself, before she could think of the danger or the shame or the whispers. "I choose him." The room erupted like a gunshot. What did she say? She's gone mad. She wants to marry that? Judge Blackwood slammed his gavel. "Order! Miss Monroe, you cannot be serious. That man is sentenced to hang." "You said any man who would have me," Evelyn replied, her voice calm. "You never said he had to have a future." A ripple of shock went through the courtroom. Deputy Collins nudged Luke with his rifle. "Well, do you accept?" Luke studied her from across the room. Amusement touched his mouth, like he enjoyed the chaos she had just created. "The lady's got sand," he drawled. "And I suppose I could use some excitement in my last 3 days." "I accept." What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. Blackwood nearly turned purple. Jeremiah Crawford, the town lawyer, stood. "Your Honor, your conditions were clear. The outlaw is still a living citizen until Sunday." The judge sputtered but could not argue. Luke's chains clattered as deputies led him forward. He stood tall despite the bruises on his face and the metal cutting into his skin. When he reached Evelyn, he lowered his voice. "You sure about this, miss? Ain't no undoing it." "Nothing in my life can be undone," she answered softly. "At least this choice is mine." The preacher rushed through the vows. No flowers, no music, no joy. Just heat and judgment and the scratching of a pen turning a woman into a wife. "I now pronounce you man and wife." A cold silence filled the room. Blackwood sneered. "Congratulations, Mrs. Callahan. You've tied yourself to a dead man." Luke's chains rattled as the deputies prepared to drag him back to the cell. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon, but Evelyn stepped forward. "Where he goes, I go." Gasps echoed. "You cannot stay in the jail," Blackwood growled, "then release him to my custody." "I'm his wife, am I not?" Another round of whispers. Crawford cleared his throat. "There is precedent." Blackwood's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "Fine. Strike his chains. He remains in her custody until his hanging at dawn on Sunday. One step out of line, outlaw, and she swings with you." The metal fell from Luke's wrists. He rubbed them slowly, looking at Evelyn with something like curiosity. He offered her his arm. "Shall we, Mrs. Callahan?" She took it. "We shall, Mr. Callahan." They walked out of the courthouse, through the crowd, into the burning afternoon sun, a condemned man and the woman who chose him. Not one of them looked back. What kind of marriage begins with 3 days left on the clock and a town hoping to see it fail? What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. The wagon they'd been given creaked down the dusty road, the sway-backed mare pulling it slow and steady. Evelyn sat beside Luke, hands clasped tightly in her lap. The sun beat down, and the heat made her vision shimmer, but she didn't let herself look back at Redemption Creek. She had buried enough there. Luke glanced sideways at her, his gray eyes carrying a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. "You really meant it," he said quietly. "You're truly riding out of town with a condemned man." "I meant every word," Evelyn replied. "I chose you, and I'll stand by that choice until the last hour." Luke gave a short, dry laugh. "Most folks spend their whole lives avoiding choices like that." "Most folks never have every door shut on them at once," she said. They rode on in silence. The road stretched ahead like a thin line carved into the land. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. Sagebrush scattered across the dry ground, and the mountains rose blue and distant on the horizon. When they reached the abandoned cabin, if it could be called a cabin, Evelyn felt something strange. Not despair, but calm. The roof sagged, the walls leaned, and the door hung crooked. But there were no judging eyes, no whispers, no threats. Just a broken little hut, waiting for 2 broken souls. Luke stopped the mare. "Well," he said, "looks like home." "It's perfect," she answered. He raised an eyebrow. "Your standards are strange, Mrs. Callahan." "It's honest," she said simply. "It's not pretending to be anything it's not." Inside, the air smelled of dust and old wood. Sunlight came through gaps in the roof, scattering gold patterns across the floor. Evelyn shook out her quilt and set it over the rope bed while Luke repaired the hinge on the door. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. They worked with an unspoken agreement, survived the next 3 days with dignity. After a while, Evelyn tried the water pump outside. It groaned like an old man, but eventually pushed out a thin stream that grew clearer as she worked it. Luke stepped beside her. "You're handling this better than I expected." "What were you expecting?" she asked. "Crying, panicking, regretting every second since you said, 'I do.'" Quote, Evelyn met his gaze, If I wanted safety, I would have taken it. If I wanted comfort, I would have begged for it. But I wanted a choice. You were the only true one in that room." Luke looked away, jaw tightening. "You don't know what I am." "I know what you aren't," she replied. "You aren't a coward." His eyes softened, just a little. That afternoon they cleaned the cabin together. Evelyn swept dust out the crooked door. Luke checked the fireplace and stacked wood. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. A quiet rhythm settled between them, as if they'd known each other longer than a few hours. Near sunset, Evelyn cooked cornmeal mush while Luke coaxed a fire to life. They ate on the floor, the light flickering across their faces. "This is probably the strangest wedding night in history," Evelyn said. Luke nodded. "I once knew a man who married a woman he met through a catalog. Turns out she was wanted in 3 states. This might be the second strangest." She laughed, surprised at herself. "What happened to them?" Quote, "They stayed married," Luke said. "Guess he liked danger." The fire crackled softly. Outside, the desert night came alive with the distant howl of coyotes. When it was time for sleep, they faced the awkwardness of the single bed. Evelyn cleared her throat. "We're adults," she said. "We can share the bed without anything improper." Luke smirked a little. "Funny thing to say to an outlaw, Mrs. Callahan. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband?" The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. "You're my husband," she said simply. "That still means something." He lay down fully clothed, leaving space between them. She settled at the edge, staring up at the stars visible through the roof's gaps. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not being what they said you were." Luke didn't answer at first. Then, "Maybe you shouldn't trust me so easily." "Maybe I should trust myself," she replied. In the darkness, they lay still, listening to the night. At some point, Evelyn drifted off. But she wasn't asleep long before she woke to find her hand resting near his, close enough that a small shift would bring them together. And when she did move, just barely, their fingers touched. Luke didn't pull away. Neither did she. The next morning, she woke to find him gone from the bed. Panic surged through her chest until she heard the sound of chopping outside. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. She rushed out and found Luke splitting wood in the early light. His shirt was damp with sweat, muscles straining with each swing. "Morning," he said. "Coffee's on. Choya root. Tastes like sadness, but it's all we've got." Evelyn smiled. "I'll learn to like it." They shared breakfast, then walked into the desert as Luke checked snares. He showed her signs in the sand, tracks she never would have recognized. Rabbit burrows, snake trails, plants that survived in dry soil. "You know this land well," she said. "Spent my life in places like this," he replied. "Desert's honest, doesn't pretend to be safe when it's not." Unlike people, she thought. Back at the cabin, Luke retrieved an old revolver left behind by whoever last lived there. "You should know how to shoot," he said. "Woman alone needs to protect herself." "Are you worried I'll shoot you?" "If you wanted me dead," Luke said, "you would have left me to the judge." What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. He taught her how to stand, how to hold the gun, how to breathe. The first shot startled her, sending her stumbling back into his chest. He steadied her without a word. By the 6th shot, she hit the dead Chala 10 yards away. "You're a natural," Luke said. "My father never let me touch guns," she replied. "Your father should have," Luke said softly. Later that afternoon, Evelyn asked the question that had been building in her mind. "What did you do, Luke? What really happened?" He hesitated, then answered. "A train robbery went wrong. A Pinkerton detective drew first. My partner shot. Bullets went wild. A woman died. Doesn't matter that I didn't shoot her. I planned the job. I was there." Evelyn watched him, her heart heavy. "You're not the monster they made you out to be." "No," Luke said quietly, "just a man who made bad choices." What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. That night, as they lay in the bed again, closer this time, Evelyn whispered, "Thank you for being honest." Luke exhaled slowly in the dark. "Thank you for choosing me, even when it made no sense." They lay awake for hours, talking quietly about childhood memories, fears they never said out loud, dreams they never thought they'd have. At some point, their hands found each other again and stayed there. Neither spoke of Sunday. Dawn was coming too fast, but for now, for tonight, they were husband and wife in a way neither expected. The stars above burned bright, too bright, as if time was running out. What does a woman do when the man she chose is dying before the gallows can ever claim him? Evelyn woke on the third morning with a cold wave of fear rolling through her. Luke wasn't asleep beside her. He wasn't outside splitting wood. He wasn't at the fire. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. She found him half collapsed near the wall, breathing hard, his skin burning with fever. "Luke?" she whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. "I'm fine," he muttered, though his voice was thick and shaky. He tried to sit up, but pain pulled him back down. Evelyn lifted his shirt, and her breath caught. The left side of his ribs was swollen, red, and streaked with infection. The wound from the deputy's rifle butt, the one he insisted was nothing, had festered overnight. "Luke, why didn't you tell me?" Evelyn's voice cracked. He gave her a weak grin. "Didn't want to ruin our honeymoon." She grabbed the water, the cloth, her mother's old herb pouch, hands shaking but determined. "You are not dying like this." "Not today, not while I still have breath." "I'm already a dead man," he rasped. "No," she said fiercely. "Not yet." She pressed water to his forehead, whispering steady words, even as panic clawed at her chest. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. She gathered willow bark for pain, feverfew for heat, and echinacea she'd prayed would grow somewhere near the old stream. Hours passed in a blur of boiling water, crushing herbs, cooling cloths, and whispered prayers. Luke drifted in and out, muttering about trains and smoke, and a woman named Sarah, his mother, she realized. He fought memories she couldn't see, battles she couldn't understand. But she stayed. She stayed when the fever spiked. She stayed when he begged for water that she gave in small sips. She stayed when he shivered so hard the bed shook. And when his fever finally broke near sunset, Luke opened his eyes, clear, tired, alive. "You stayed," he whispered. "You're my husband," she said softly. "Where else would I go?" Quote. He stared at her like she was a miracle he wasn't sure he deserved. As he regained strength, Evelyn packed their few belongings. Time was running out. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. The deputies believed Luke would be waiting at the cabin when dawn came. But everything had changed. She stood before him now, hands firm, voice steady. "We're running," she said. Luke blinked slowly, confused. "Evelyn, I can't. I gave my word." Her heart cracked at his stubborn honor. "You gave your word to men who would kill you whether you kept it or not. Judge Blackwood doesn't want obedience. He wants a spectacle. He wants revenge for something that happened before I was even born." Luke tried to sit up. She supported him. "I'm not dragging you into a life on the run," he said. "You didn't drag me anywhere," she replied. "I married you, I chose you, and I'm choosing you again." He stared at her, something fierce and broken in his eyes. "You sure?" Quote. Evelyn nodded. "I'd rather be an outlaw's wife on the run than a free woman living someone else's idea of righteousness." That was all it took. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. Luke rose, still weak but determined, and together they packed their clothes, the gun, the money he'd hidden in a cave 2 miles north. They saddled the old mare. Luke winced as he mounted, but he managed. The sun dipped below the horizon. "We leave at dark," Evelyn said. "And go where?" he asked. "Anywhere that isn't Redemption Creek." He watched her in the dim light, admiration deepening in his expression. "You're remarkable, you know that?" She shrugged. "I've had a remarkable teacher." They left under a sky filled with stars, guiding the mare through the dark, silent desert. Evelyn walked beside Luke, steadying the horse when the ground dipped or rocks scattered beneath its hooves. "Why aren't you on the saddle?" he asked. "You can barely sit upright," she teased gently. "I'm not letting your stubborn pride get you killed." He smirked. "Bossy?" "And alive," she shot back. "You're welcome. What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband?" The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. She could feel his smile in the quiet darkness. Near midnight, they stopped at a rise overlooking the canyon. The moonlight silvered Luke's face as he slid carefully from the saddle. "I've been thinking," he said, breathless from the effort. "If we make it out of this, if we make it somewhere new, what happens then?" Evelyn stepped close. "Whatever we want to happen." His voice softened. "Evelyn, do you regret any of this?" Quote. She didn't hesitate. "Only that we didn't get more time at the start." Luke's throat moved as he swallowed. "You're something else, Mrs. Callahan." She took his hand, feeling the warmth of life pulsing through him, a gift she had almost lost. "And you," she whispered, "are worth crossing deserts, dodging posses, and making a run for the rest of our lives." Luke lowered his forehead to hers. "I don't deserve you." "You don't have to," she said softly. "You just have to live." What kind of woman points at a condemned outlaw and says she wants him for a husband? The courthouse in Redemption Creek felt like an oven that August afternoon. They descended into the canyon, disappearing into its shadowed bends as the first hint of dawn touched the sky behind them. Redemption Creek would wake soon and find an empty cabin. Judge Blackwood would rage. Deputies would ride hard. Wanted posters would spread. But for now, it was just them. Two people who chose each other when the world told them not to. The outlaw with the storm-gray eyes. The judge's daughter with fire in her heart. Their story had begun with chains and judgment. Now it continued with freedom and choice, and whatever lay ahead, danger, hardship, love, it would be theirs. Together.